All right, you grasshoppers. I'm really, really happy today. Excited to have these two fine gentlemen on. First of all, they're two Canadians from Calgary, Alberta, and we've kind of joined forces here. This is Angus Taylor. I'll explain him in a little bit, and Craig Stenhouse. How are you guys doing today?
Great.
Good.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having us, Tom.
Well, my pleasure. We ventured off into the world of CBD products, and these gentlemen I've joined with, and we have a company called Infused Products. Actually, it's their company. They luckily dragged me in here, so they didn't find anybody else that they wanted, so they were stuck with me, I guess, where it was. So really interesting. Both these guys have got a really extensive background in the business world, and Angus in particular started a company called New Leaf, and we're going to talk a little bit that to start with. Angus, you started New Leaf. How long ago did you start that company?
I guess it would have been way back 2016, in response to what was emerging in Canada as a real amazing business opportunity to build retail cannabis stores that would sell legal product, after legalization in Canada occurred for adult use. So I had at the time, recognized that the timing was just right, and we executed this sort of more or less a real estate play on how to acquire the kind of properties that would be successful, and then also how to build a store brand around those assets that gave the kind of experience that we intended for our customers.
Right, and you started this company from nothing, right? It was your.
Yeah, it's got me and a couple partners. We went to just sort of like what we're doing with Infused Products right now. We started by raising some money amongst our friends and family. And in the case of New Leaf, our major raise was done with a corporate partner who eventually ended up acquiring us. So it was a great experience, I must say. Certainly one of the most challenging business experiences I've had, to go from 3 partners to 350 some employees in 18 months, and to sell the business after that time. It was a great experience for sure. And we're doing it.
Sorry to interrupt you there. Sorry to interrupt you, Craig. That's the part that gets me. That I think is fantastic. That timeline, right? So in 18 months, you built it from nothing to 350 employees and flipped and sold it.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you anticipate that? Did you think that was going to happen?
No, not really. We actually anticipated operating the business for a lot longer, and in fact, the products that Infused Products is bringing to market right now were part of the sort of thing I was doing on the side, getting ready for the Cannabis 2.0 story in Canada, which was really about infused products like and concentrates like vape pens and edibles and that sort of thing. So when Craig and I started Infused, it was with the mind to create a variety of new products. And that journey has now taken us to launching them in the UK. We'll be launching these products in the US in the coming weeks. And we're super excited about really the intentions of the company to go global. And we really see that that's starting to come together right now.
So Craig and I both like to give each other a hard time a little bit here. So I'm going to give him a little dig here. So you asked him to join you with New Leaf, and he turned you down when it started?
I was asking him to be an investor for sure. He had a great career in energy, and I knew I would never take him away from that with New Leaf to begin with. But I think Craig, he can tell it himself. But when New Leaf came to an end for me, it was one of those realizations that I wasn't quite done, and also that there was a good business opportunity to carry forward with the stuff that we had in our pocket. So, when I started to talk to Craig about that, that's really what was compelling. I hope, anyway. So he can tell that.
Right. So he finally came around, right? You tried to drag him away, and you kind of had to prove yourself to him, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you're talking about
a
guy who is a senior person in the energy industry. Those are great careers to leave, and so. Go ahead, Craig. You can say what.
Well, Craig, so your background then in the energy business? What companies were you with?
Sure. So I started off in the UK working as a sustainability advisor, and particularly with energy companies throughout the world, based in either Europe or the UK. I moved back to Canada to join Encana. And there was a point around 2009, 2010, where Encana split into two companies. And then I went with Synovus Energy and ran their corporate responsibility team for the next eight years. But let me just go back quickly to Angus, because I find what part of my full-time job here is pumping his tires, because he always flashes over it. We never spend enough time on it. These guys took a company within 18 months from three of them, and then they exited as Canada's largest retail cannabis chain. Like it's just tremendous what they did. And I'm a big fan. I talk about this a lot. Big fan of relationships. And one lesson one lesson my father had taught me was surround yourself with smarter people. And clearly, he's a gem, and he took that company to what it is. So I just wanted to get that pump of the tires in.
Okay.
So we did talk around 2018, I believe it was, and it was kind of a fool me once. And then when we sat down in a small dingy pub in Calgary in the end of 2019, and had this idea to take into, a place called the Palomino. Really dingy, but great Palomino. Yeah, it's a great joint. Yeah,
I've been there. I was at the Calgary Stampede. I went to the Palomino, actually. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, the great guys that run that place, and used to be right across the street from Synovus. So I'd run down from my office in Synovus, and we'd start contriving this new business plan to go buy 5,000 kilos of pot from growers in BC. It was kind of it was a pretty interesting career trip for me.
Yeah. Good. And the energy business now in Calgary, that's really died down because of the price of oil now, right?
Right, and that had a big part of it. At the time, I really enjoyed my time in the energy industry, and it gave me, next to hockey, it gave me everything that I have today. And unfortunately, the last 5-6 years, just this dark cloud across all of Alberta, let alone Calgary. And I just grown to this point where I think a change was needed, and change is always good. And I still have a lot of friends, my partners in the energy industry. So I'm still a cheerleader, and that's just a whole nother podcast that we could talk about, because it's in Canada.
And you talk about Calgary. Calgary's one of my favorite cities too. You fly in there, you go up to Banff, a couple hours drive away. And I remember Mike Rogers. He did some, I think, radio and TV work with the Flames out there, and we were teammates together here in New York. And so he invited me out one time to stay with him and his family and go to the Calgary Stampede. And if you guys have not been to the Stampede, you got to go to the Stampede, right? I mean, that was fantastic. I had a great time.
Yeah. Tell me, did you ever play in the Corral?
Yes, we did. My first year. My first year.
What a great barn.
Oh, well, and too, the glass on the boards were like cement. Like most of the boards give a little bit. And they had a big team too, that Poplinski and Otto were just getting started.
Right.
I think.
Willie Platt. Yeah.
Willie Platt, yes. And they had a couple other guys there. Huge team. They pounded you there too. So I actually I tried out for this is the funny part. It's in my book, actually. It's coming out soon, hopefully. I was trying out for the Canadian Olympic team, and we had training camp there in Calgary, and they couldn't afford much, so they had to stay in the construction trailers out in the parking lot of the Calgary Corral. That's where we had training camp and everything. So it was good. It was good. I didn't fare too well. I tell the story in my book. I was young and wild at that time, and I decided that it would be a great idea to go out and have a couple of adult beverages first night of training camp. And got home to the trailer, and we decided that it would be a really brilliant idea about 2 and 3 in the morning to take the furniture out of the TV room and put it on the trainer's car. Now, why we thought this was a great idea, I have no idea. And then the guys I was with, they were smart enough to go to bed. I have no clue why this thought process happened, but I decided to go tell the trainer at 3 in the morning that we did this, thinking it was a really funny joke. So the next morning, I remember not, Father Bauer used to run Hockey Canada. This priest, really well-respected man, real gentleman, comes walking towards me. Now, I think he's, here's how naive I am. I think he's coming over to me to like give me a hug, like, oh, Tom, that was a funny joke last night. He handed me a plane ticket and sent me home. And I deserved it. I had given them exactly what they needed to set the tempo for everybody else. This was not going to happen. So it was, so I had to walk, or I had to crawl home with my tail between my legs after that. So it was, really tell us some stuff. Yeah. It doesn't. So
That's too bad, I must say. That would have probably been a medal around your neck if it had worked out differently, hey?
yeah, well, it was the 80 Olympic one, so that's the one the U.S. one, but it was still to be in the Olympics would have been fantastic. But it was live and learn. It turned out to be a great thing because I was so mad at myself. I went home back to my senior year of college, and we ended up going to the national championships, lost the final game, and it wasn't just because we had a fantastic team, but ended up having a great year, but had to learn a lesson to do it. But so the CBD business. It's kind of still, as far as the laws in the U.S. and Canada. Well, in Canada, it's wide open, right? Everything's.
So it's a regulated substance. So cannabis as a plant is adult legal, if you like, meaning that you can buy it recreationally. And, of course, within cannabis, there are lots of different phytochemicals that are produced by the plant. And people know about CBD and THC because those are the two big stars. But the big difference between them, of course, is that CBD does not inebriate you. So there are medicinal benefits that the plant offers and properties that really speak to a lot of sort of day-to-day aches and pains, aspects of life that I think really could bring benefit to a lot of folk. And so we were looking initially at developing a catalog of products around CBD, and chose to launch in the UK really because of how impressive the market and the understanding of consumers around CBD is in that country.
Right. I remember when we first started talking to, part of my concerns was the kind of the stigma. I know it's not marijuana, but it's that marijuana family, right? And people talk about marijuana, it's a gateway drug and all these things. And I think more people now are accepting the fact that this is a real natural, healthy way to help treat some ailments, right? I mean, we can't claim that it cures any diseases or anything like that, but it helps aches and pains and all that.
I think the thing to remember is that it's early days for cannabis. Being prohibited from even doing basic science on the plant for the last almost 80 years has meant that it's not well understood. There's been some really impressive science that's been done in Israel in particular, and now research is really happening all over the world as the accessibility to doing research on the plant has changed.
I didn't know that. So for 80 years now, they haven't allowed you to do research on it even?
You could, however, because it was a class A narcotic, or classified as such, if you were a university professor and you wanted to work on the plant, it meant that you had to basically create a bunker on campus. So all of those security measures that basically would be the equivalent of a bank would have to be in place for the scientists to control access to the plant that they're working on. And as a result, really, it wasn't that they were prohibited from necessarily doing the research, but the cost of doing that research was usually too difficult to get through, the chancellor's office at the university. And so, with a few exceptions, mostly science has avoided the plant for such a long time.
Right. And Craig, from a business side of it
too, was the government funding as well. When classified as such a level of drug, the one thing about Europe, Israel, and Spain in particular is the funding mechanisms are more easily attainable for companies that are working on that. Whereas because it was classified Class A, that the government wouldn't fund it.
And Craig, where do you think this business as a whole is going to go?
Wow, great question. So you can even see, we're talking about cannabis and CBD. Even take a look at psilocybin and the work that is being done on PTSD, concussions. Even some of your alumni are working on psilocybin plays to help athletes. So I really view it as it starts to normalize, it starts to become, my dad, for example, Angus and I sat back and figured out a treatment for him with fibromyalgia where he couldn't get out of bed. And just using CBD has really helped him get off of prednisone. And just that simple act, as this older generation starts to see the baby boomers see the benefits of it, and then I think the younger generations are are in tune with the benefits of it. But I think the legalese and those responsible for pushing the regulatory environments, I think there has to be a change there to become more normalized, and you can see that coming. And once that happens, it becomes a commodity, and then it's no different than any other commodity.
Right. Here's a question. Here's I think a little bit more of a statement, but kind of the sentiment you hear from a lot of people. Great to learn about, but like anything, if overused, big problem happening in young. Is that accurate?
So the stats wouldn't support that, actually. If you look to Colorado as the first jurisdiction in the United States to legalize, they were, and there is a lot of concern about youth accessing cannabis. I should point out that the difference between adult use is really focused around THC, and CBD, to be fair, is much more of a health product category, and we see it more so as a health and wellness category ingredient as opposed to THC, which has many medicinal benefits, but obviously people like to use it for fun.
Right. So there's CBD oil. And it isn't as simple to say it's CBD oil. There's different ways you can blend the CBD oil, correct?
So the plant itself, CBD is a cannabinoid, and there are over 120 different cannabinoids the plant actually produces. So when you use an extraction process, what you're essentially doing is dissolving all of those phytochemicals into a liquid. And then you use that liquid and you refine it further to formulate it into a product. Right. So the extraction process is really important because it takes not only just the cannabinoid compounds, but also the flavor compounds, terpenes, for instance, and terpenes are in another area of real scientific interest. Because many terpenes are being associated with actual effects, and people actually know this quite well. Like even adding lavender to your bath, for instance, is really about aromatherapy, and aromatherapy comes from terpenes. So cannabis has terpenes too. That's what makes the plant smell the way that it does.
What's the terpene? What is a terpene?
It's a smell. It's an aromatic compound. So it is the chemical that actually interacts with the nerves that are in our senses to tell us how something smells.
Right. So if you want to make a CBD oil to deal with depression, or a CBD oil to deal with PTSD or epilepsy, all those different things, you would have different blends of the CBD oil for all those different.
Yeah, so it's more not so much just this, like the CBD itself is just the one ingredient, and I think of it more so like, if you want to use the analogy of a car, CBD is really the engine in the car, and the terpenes are like the steering wheel. So they'll take you from one side to the other, and that's one of the reasons why the effects from CBD are so varied, or in cannabis in general. I mean, there's actually 1,800 plus cultivars of cannabis that exist. Every one of those cultivars provides a different chemical cocktail. And so when we were formulating our products, what we really did was look to nature and look for the cannabis strains that were known to produce particular effects. Some cannabis strains definitely make you fall asleep. So when you analyze those chemically and you look at all of the compounds that are present in that plant, what we've done is try to recreate it and essentially build from base ingredients to create an amalgam that's equivalent to the plant that has that known effect.
Right. And then there's the sprays and the creams that you can put on joints. But again, you were describing it one time too, and correct me if I'm wrong, you will obviously, but it's not good enough to just have the CBD to sit on top of the skin. You have to have some product in there that helps the CBD oil get through the skin into the joint, correct?
So, the main thing is that there is a system within the body called the endocannabinoid system. And these are specific receptors that the CBD interacts with and causes effects around the body. And so, on the skin, through the alimentary canal, like the digestive tract, there are things called CB2 receptors, which CBD does interact with, and that's where a lot of the science is focusing on trying to understand the mechanism by which CBD actually creates these benefits.
Craig, do you understand all this stuff?
I love this guy.
I know. He talks. Just so everybody knows too. And again, Craig mentioned it. It's our job, Craig and our job to, my job to help make sure everybody understands how smart Angus is. He won't be telling anybody how smart he is, but that's great. That description is. I don't think. Yeah, because I think there is still some people that have that stigma that it's a marijuana product. It's CBD, right? And it's all in that same family. But it's when you describe how it actually works with the body, you see how the health benefits. You can't claim that it, again, cures anything. But so there's been a lot of people that I've known, I should say a couple people I've known that their family members had problems with epilepsy, and that CBD has been very successful in helping not cure people, control that issue, correct?
Well, so it's interesting to bring that up because, often it takes personal stories to move governments to change things significantly. And one of the most powerful stories that has created change for cannabis was that of a young girl named Charlotte, who lived with a very rare form of epilepsy that caused her to have multiple seizures in an hour even. And the life expectancy for sufferers of this condition is very short. They often don't even make it beyond the age of 10. And the drugs that they put them on to sort of reduce the severity of the seizures are really impactful to the person. They're heavy narcotics. They basically just drug the person to the point where the seizures don't hurt as much. But amazingly, there is a strain of cannabis that has a chemical cocktail that it grows that has got an effect on this form of epilepsy that no other pharmaceutical has been able to duplicate. In fact, some of the only approved medical drugs that include cannabis ingredients have been approved for this specific reason. So, what's amazing if you look up if you look up Charlotte and her story, she really became the face of change for the industry, and it was her story that really made people think, why are we holding back the benefit that this plant can give people? And if there's this much of a dramatic change that's possible for a girl like her, what might it mean for everybody else?
Right. So in Canada, again, it's open to cannabis, marijuana for medical use, for recreation. Craig, so here in the States, what the politics of all this? Like, there are some states that have made it legal. Are we getting to the point where you think it's going to be legal for the country federally? I mean, so the banking system can, that's part of the issue from a business side, right? I mean, because from state, the federal government still really declares that it's illegal, correct?
Right. State to state is different. And you've nailed it on the head too, with respect to the financial system. When we first started this company, we should mention this, on a side note, St. Vincent we have a lot of friends and business partners there right now, and they're undergoing a bit of a humanitarian disaster with a recent eruption. So please find a Red Cross and maybe donate and help them out down there. But when we first moved down there, even trying to move money, we couldn't move money because the U.S. system, everyone's afraid of getting offside with the U.S. system. We were looking to buy a piece of land. We were looking to shuffle money for salaries, and we just could not move it because they were so scared that the U.S. would put them on a list of where they would not be able to move money anymore. So state to state, it's difficult. Angus is pretty up to speed on this as well. Maybe 3 to 5 years if it works its way out federally, but I'm not certain we're at a point in the near future you're going to see it federally legalized. You have these small pockets, probably maybe 2/3 of the U.S. now is looking at it or has done something with cannabis or CBD. So it's moving that way. Certainly an area that we're looking at for different countries around the world, and the U.S. is on that market, and we're looking to get into it pretty quick.
Right. So do you think it's more likely if the Democrats are in charge or the Republicans, is there a difference?
I think it's a good question. Some people traditionally associate conservatives with, being slower to act on this issue than others. We've seen some really interesting participants in the cannabis industry in Canada after it legalized. In fact, I can think of more than one company off the top of my head that has a board member who used to be a chief of police. So, there seems to be a lot of actors now in the industry that you wouldn't have thought would be interested. But you know what? It's good business, and it's a good business to be in. And frankly, as a legal business, there's, people really have to ask themselves whether their moral issues with cannabis, where do they stem from? And what's interesting is really looking at the Canadian experience on legalization and how it's a big whatever, to be fair. And that there was all of the issues that were being brought up by the detractors before legalization. There was an expectation that people were going to be driving high, and that the concerns of youth would see large uptakes of new consumers, and the government's been paying very close attention to those issues. In fact, youth consumption of cannabis hasn't changed. In fact, no demographics of cannabis consumption have changed significantly. The largest new user group was actually plus 65. So, that would seem to point to me towards folks that, had followed the letter of the law their whole lives, been told that cannabis was not good for them. But with legalization in place, the curiosity of the benefits that are being discussed has people wanting to understand whether it's a right fit for them. And the truth is that cannabis offers a lot of benefit to especially the aged. With sort of the day-to-day aches and pains that we suffer as we get older. Cannabis is a great fit for a lot of that.
Right. And do you think there's a lot of people that were kind of behind closed doors using marijuana in one form or another, and then all of a sudden it's legal, and they will see, now I can tell everybody that I'm marijuana, right?
Sure. I mean, the stigma is really tough.
Did he come out saying he was doing it? Oh, that's right. He said he didn't inhale.
He never inhaled.
That's right. That's what it was. I forgot about that. Yeah, that was classic. That was good.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Anyway, I think the reality is that people just haven't seen the negative effects that people were worried about, and it doesn't matter what jurisdiction that you actually look at. If you dive into the statistics that the governments are collecting, almost universally the problems that were proposed as issues that were going to be created simply haven't happened.
Right. Like one of the comments here is a gateway drug, right? I mean, has there ever really been even a study that would prove that is even a possibility?
Well, I mean, the studies that have been pointed to that suggest that it's a gateway drug, you'd have to say that the questions themselves within the studies would have to be looked at carefully. I would wonder why depression isn't considered a gateway ailment to drug addiction, because the fundamental change that really needs to happen in drug law is the idea that if a person is addicted to something, addiction is a negative social situation where they cannot control their lives any longer. That's a medical problem. That's not a criminal act. So, the change that I think is appropriate for cannabis law is to treat addicts as patients and not as criminals.
Right. I'd like to re-explain that before.
Can I make a comment on that too?
Yes. Yes,
I'd like to go back to that. I think one of the most significant challenges that our industry faces is the lack of education, and part of that is investing the monies necessary. It's not going to take one company. Every company is going to have to do their part, because once we're able to, again, it comes back to that normalization. And when the data comes out and people are more aware of it, that's one component of how we're going to be successful. And to touch back on where do you see the industry going, along with education, I think there's two other elements that companies that'll really stand companies apart in this industry. One would be on the innovative side, the innovation in products. What establishes you outside of every other CBD brand, whether it's you're investing in education or you coming up with new and innovative products. That's one thing that we're certainly looking at. And the second component to that too is partnerships. I think partnerships are very important. We've got a couple of great partners, one out of California, Vessel, who's really been fundamental in us as we've emerged as a company, and we have another one in Calgary. So I guess with those three components of education, innovation, and really being collaborative, I do think that that's going to help the entire industry evolve and get to the point where it'll be a heavy hitter.
We get our boy Angus out there all the time. Like what I like what you said there earlier, Angus. I don't think anybody's really, to me, has ever really explained how CBD interacts with your body and how you explain that to me. So it's not like, I think a lot of people still have the perception that it's a marijuana product. It numbs the body or whatever it is, but there's an actual chemical interaction there based on the blend of CBD, what you're trying to accomplish in the body, correct?
Absolutely. So that when Craig mentions innovation, what I brought up earlier with looking to the plant for inspiration, we call it biomimicry essentially within our formulations, where we're trying to recreate what nature does.
Good. And guys, just so you know too, in Calgary, if you're ever looking for a condo, you can go to Craig and he's in the condo. It's kind of an inside joke.
Special price for you. Just hashtag True Grit Life, and we'll give you a special discount.
Oh God, but it's fine. I won't tell the whole story. Craig had a condo. He had some renters that didn't treat the place too well, so he's still going through some battles with that. I like to stir the pot to make sure you bring that up.
Yeah, thanks. I'm gonna go lay in the corner and suck my thumbnail for a bit next time.
That's good. Well, listen, guys, I hope you guys learned something. We're going to try to do this on a regular basis. Sure. Both Angus and Craig there really try to educate people. Like Craig, I think you said it very well. Like I've been educated today in the show just by Angus talking about that stuff. Right. And really show people that, and listen, it's not for everybody too, right? We don't want to try to be pushing it on anybody. If you really feel the benefits to it are going to help you, then I think as long as you understand what you're getting yourself into, I think it's a great product. So, all right, guys, great to have you. We'll see you. Let's do this next week again at the same time, okay?
You got it, Tom.
All right, guys. Take care.
Done deal. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.